Check it out. It's the Laugh to Learn podcast. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 14 of the Laugh to Learn podcast, your weekly source for a comedic spin on all the goings-on in the world. I come to you from the Great White North every Tuesday evening, Eastern Standard Time, fresh for the download to listen to at work on Wednesday morning for everyone all around the world. And of course, this is recorded in Eastern Standard Time, so it may post at any point in the day for you, but generally Tuesday evenings, Eastern Standard Time. This podcast comes to you ad-free, of course, as always, and all that I ask is that you subscribe on any podcasting platform or over on YouTube if that's where you're listening, and tell all of your friends about me, either in person, because it's so easy to just walk up to someone and be like, yo, cool-ass podcast you need to listen to, or you can share it over social media, which is always great, too. Don't forget, although I'm not sure why you would actually forget because I haven't told you before, but now that you'll know, don't forget, this Saturday, which is May 11th, I'll be live on twitch.tv/Ultimate Fight Companions once again at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for UFC 237, doing a live watch-along. It's going to be great. It is the biggest show that I do as far as numbers are concerned, so it'd be nice to keep making it bigger. We're going to keep making it better. We're having a big show meeting tomorrow, or perhaps the day after. Haven't really figured that out, to figure out exactly what we're going to do, but we are going to keep growing the brand over there, and it's fun to do things live. Doing things recorded, like I already screwed up. This is episode 14. Once I started recording, I called it episode 13. Not sure why, but that just happened. Whereas if I was doing it live, I wouldn't have been able to re-record that. So if you're into MMA, be sure to check it out. Even if you're not really into the sport, I mean, it's a little bit extreme. You know, it's people literally knocking the hell out of each other. If you're not into it, I get it. But if you're kind of into it, come check it out. You can watch us on one screen and show the event on another, because, of course, we can't show you the event because we don't want to go to jail. Actually, I don't think we would go to prison. I don't even know that they could probably fine us, but we're not profiting off it. So they could argue that we're stealing money from them, but this is a whole other thing. Either way, check it out this Saturday, UFC 237 live, twitch.tv/Ultimate Fight Companions. Follow me on social media, which you can find in the description for this podcast. And I will certainly be talking about our show and this show and other things that I do all over there. So this week, I teased it last week. I was going to do it last week, but then, of course, the whole Venezuela issue went down. Things in Venezuela, of course, have not turned out as I would have liked to have seen. Basically, nothing really has changed so far. There's talk about a nationwide strike, so I'm not really sure what that's going to look like. I guess no one really is. I saw a new statistic that the average adult Venezuelan has lost 23 pounds, which is crazy. There's like no food in the country, so hopefully things turn around, and hopefully I don't have to talk about it that much longer, that it gets fixed. But of course, as we all know, nothing in this world really gets fixed in a positively timely manner. So this week, I'm going to be answering the question, why do people think the earth is flat? And I decided to not really add any comedy into it because I want to take it seriously, and I'm going to do a rant at the end that's going to kind of explain why I want to take this perspective seriously. If I do happen to laugh in the middle of it, I'm going to try not to. Some things that I read about are they're just funny to say it loud, to be perfectly honest. But because I'm not really doing any comedy, I wanted to bring up one thing, because literally this punchline writes itself. Israel, I mean, this isn't a joke, but Israel had over 600 rockets launched from the Gaza Strip, launched by Hamas, into civilian areas. 4 Israeli civilians were killed. Several houses, like residential houses, nothing to do with the military, and buildings and whatnot were destroyed. Stores and buses and ambulances. It's absolutely horrible. And in retaliation, Israel launched roughly 150 military strikes back over the border into Gaza, targeting specific military targets, of course. And as usual, the whole world is saying, wow, look at Israel attacking poor innocent people. Let's be honest, the reason that people are saying that is because they attacked back against Muslims. And it turns out it's cool to kill Jews, but not Muslims. But you got to call it for what it was. They were attacked by a sovereign nation, which is what Hamas is. They have their own government. They voted them in. People say, well, they don't get the right to vote. That's because they chose not to have the right to vote. I've talked about this before on the podcast. You can check that episode out. But the joke buried in here is that one of the buildings that Israel targeted was also housing Turkey's state-run media company. There was actually no one in the building at the time at all when it came down, but they targeted this military building, and I guess there was a small office in it that the Turkish state-run media owned and operated out of. The hilarious thing about this is Turkey put out a statement saying that their news agency was attacked by Israel, so every single country that believes in freedom of the press needs to come out against Israel. So, if you read between the lines, Turkey is saying, look, they attacked our state-run news agency. Right? Our state-run news agency. So all of these countries that believe in freedom of the press need to defend us. Like, what the fuck? That's literally, like, you can't even make that up. There's no punchline to it. It's just straight up. Like, what are you talking about? Everyone should be cheering like they destroyed a state-run news agency. That's the type of thing that people like me go like, yeah, hit him again. We don't come out against it. What kind of a moron would I be if I did that? I believe I should be able to say what I want on the microphone. I think your citizens should be able to say what they want about you. You don't think that. So down with your state-run news agencies, Turkey, and get that out of here. Anyways, on to the topic of the day. I seriously don't think I'll ever get over that turkey story. So, why do people think the Earth is flat? I've been asking myself this question for a very long time, and I've never had a real solid answer. I had a coworker who was an adamant flat earther at one time, and he never really gave me an answer. So, we had talked about it before. I had asked him questions, and he'd give me specific answers to those questions, but I never got the whole picture. So, going into this, all I really know is that flat earthers believe there's a conspiracy bigger than any of us can comprehend, and that there are powerful individuals who in some way benefit by conceiving us the world is flat. Now again, this is my opinion going into it, and you'll see on the other side that my opinion's actually changed on this. Don't worry, it hasn't changed that drastically, but my opinion has certainly changed on it. Now, as I bid my Amazon purchase history and my Google search history a noble adieu before I embark on this journey, I only hope that at the end I will be able to bring some sort of understanding for us round Earth shills who believe, of course, that the Earth is spherical. By the way, I bought a round Earth shill shirt, so that should tell you where I lie at the end of this, Anyways, here we go. So for the purpose of this podcast, I've used public sources from the experts at the Flat Earth Society. So you can just imagine J.K. Rowling made $1 billion on her imaginary world, and now these guys run their own website doing essentially the same thing, but of course they use scientific fact to back themselves up. Now, the third paragraph on the Flat Earth Society, which is the FES wiki, a TFES wiki actually, states that, quote, "The Flat Earth Society holds that there is a difference between believing and knowing. If you don't know something and cannot demonstrate it first principles? Cannot demonstrate it by first principles. I don't know what that means. Then you shouldn't believe it. We must, at the very least, know exactly how conclusions were made about the world." I have to reread this. This is okay. I'm not even cutting this. I'm reading it quote for quote, and it made sense in my head the first time I read it through, but now it doesn't. So, quote, "The Flat Earth Society holds that there is a difference between believing and knowing. If you don't know something and cannot demonstrate it by first principles, then you shouldn't believe it. We must, at the very least, know exactly how conclusions were made about the world and the strengths and weaknesses behind those deductions. Our society emphasizes the demonstration and explanation of knowledge." End quote. Very confusing. Yeah, that's just an aside. I have to cut. It's going to seem like I got through that a lot quicker than I did, even though I read through it twice. It took me way too long to figure that out. So that's kind of what I get from reading about Flat Earth and watching some videos on Flat Earth, that it's a lot of information, and maybe it's just overload. Maybe I need to spend weeks and months and years going over this, but let's go. So there are many aspects of the theory that I'm actually interested in, at least interested in better understanding. And hopefully this will take me from the realm of knowing to believing, as they have proposed, whatever the result may be. Primarily, I want to know about the ice wall, the map and circumnavigation, gravity and how it works on a flat surface, photos from space, space itself, and then I want to know all about this conspiracy hiding the information. So, first of all, the ice wall. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to explain in very simple principles. I put all of my questions together from the beginning, because I do understand a fair bit of the hypothesis of flat Earth. So I'm going to start with the ice wall, because I think it's honestly one of the most fascinating points, and it's one of the driving points of the hypothesis. So the ice wall is the basic starting point for flat Earth. The hypothesis, which is most widely accepted, at least in so much as flat Earth is accepted, is that the Antarctic is not actually a singular place in the southern hemisphere. Instead, it's an outer perimeter of our known oceans and our known livable world. And it extends potentially for an infinite distance if you were able to get over and beyond the wall itself. Now, the wall is made of several sheets of ice between 50 and 150 meters tall, broken up by massive mountain ranges, and they're said to be home to hurricanes and severe life-ending storms, as well as temperatures approaching absolute zero. Now, of course, absolute zero or 0 Kelvin, I'm not even going to try it, negative 270-something degrees Celsius. It's the point where oxygen freezes. Now, no human is known to have crossed beyond the ice wall and returned to tell the tale. And I just totally made that Celsius. I actually don't remember what it was. So either way, if you go over the ice wall, you're not coming back. The ice wall is the answer to the question I think that we all have surrounding flat Earth, which is, why don't people just fall off, right? That's like the number one thing. It's like, oh, the Earth is flat. Okay, why don't people jump off the Earth? So I, just like you, have many more questions on the ice wall, but just the basics of it are that it holds all of the oceans in. It's this massive thing of ice. You can't get over it. You can't get beyond it. No one knows what's over there. So there's a bunch of theories, but I'm not going to go through those theories. I should say those hypotheses. Because, I mean, we all just need to defrost some brain cells and push through this web on to the next question. But what you need to know is that there is an ice wall, you cannot get beyond it, and it encircles the entire Earth. Now, the globe, or as it appears to Flat Earth Society, the disk, is the next thing that I want to know about. They position the Earth on a flat plane, and the map appears with the North Pole at the center and the rest of the continents stretched out away from it, sort of looking like you're just looking down at an image of a map, a round map. As was mentioned, Antarctica forms an ice wall around the outside of the known world. So it's kind of difficult to explain. You can look up a picture. They're very easy to find. It's kind of a fascinating look. It's as if you took a globe and just stretched it out with the North Pole at the middle, a whole bunch of countries ranging out, and then they have a large ice wall instead of an Antarctica. Now, circumnavigation is taken quite literally with this model, because as you travel around the world in a literal circle, circumnavigate, circular, that is how you get around the world. And because the Antarctic is always at the outside, with the Arctic always at the center, the Arctic, of course, being the North Pole, a compass will always point north and south correctly. So it's kind of a way to get around the generally accepted belief of north and south magnetic poles. Now, there are several other models of map theories, but this one seems the most widely accepted. You can scroll through tons of them if you'd like. And the others I've seen are, believe it or not, even crazier for me to understand, and would it be even harder to explain. But this one seems to be the one that is most accepted. You come across it most often when you're searching for flat Earth maps and Earth images. So with the flat Earth, the next question really is, how does the sun work? How do day and nights and seasons work? So the sunrise and sunset are described by the sun moving in a circle around the North Pole. Once again, the North Pole is at the middle, so the sun just moves in a circle around the world. So for anyone who's ever owned a reptile or paid any attention to a reptile cage, the sun's beams kind of work like the hood of a heat lamp. So the sun shines in a very limited space. It's almost as if it's projected from a cone or like a really narrow lampshade. It's also believed that the sun is actually significantly smaller and closer to the Earth, which would allow for this very narrow field of light to be projected onto the planet. And I'm not even sure if planet is the right word, but projected onto the Earth. So that as the sun goes around, when it's above us in this narrow cone of light, it's day, and then as it goes away, it becomes night. Now, the seasons and the solstice are explained by the sun rotating closer to and farther from the North Pole in a cyclical cycle. Cyclical cycle, that was a dumb thing to say. In a cycle, or in a cyclical manner. Cyclical cycle, that's like saying two words twice. Either way, that was my writing, not the Flat Earth Society's writing. So when the sun is close to the pole, it is summertime in the northern hemisphere, or at least what we know as the northern hemisphere. I guess they would call it the central circle. Look, I just created some flat earth theory. So what we know as the north, it should be called the center circle. Flat earth people. I know a bunch of flat earth people are going to be listening because tons are following me, and I honestly hope that I'm projecting the theory correctly. But of course they will certainly correct me if I'm wrong. You can hit me up on the website, www.laughtolearnpodcast.com. So when the sun is rotating closer to the pole, the North Pole that is, it is summer in those northern locations. And when it rotates farther from the pole, it creates winter in the north and summer in the south. Now, this one is actually pretty good, because if the theory were correct, right, if Earth were flat and operated like this part of it would actually make logical sense. It's hard to think of another reason why we would have winters and summers. Of course, I don't think the day and night thing really makes sense, but if that was the case, if everything up to this point was true, then yeah, I think it would have to be the only way that you could create summer and winter, unless there's some other thing that I don't know of, which I'm sure there are more theories. But, you know. Yeah, so next, I asked about how gravity works in this scenario, because it's really fascinating. Why are we not all pulled inward like literally everything else we can look at? Why are we so special? This question is especially important to me because this is my argument with religion, is that I think it's very egocentric and I find it fascinating that people think that we are so special. So this one I'm really interested in. Well, the Earth is not a planet. And look, we answered our earlier question. Earth is not a planet because it actually sits at the center of the solar system. Poor Galileo. And comparing the Earth to a normal celestial body is like comparing, this is straight off the website, quote, like comparing basketballs to the court on which they bounce, end quote. Now, I have to break character. I have to break from this for a moment because this is a very strange thing to say. It's like comparing basketballs on the court on which they bounce. Why not say it's like comparing apples to oranges? Why do you have to make this strange comparison that kind of doesn't really make sense? It's like if someone says to you, well, hey, why can't you come out Saturday? And you reply with, well, last I checked, the Polish actually don't love sausages, so, no, I'm not coming out on Saturday. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you jumping to basketballs? It doesn't answer the question, and I think that's the biggest problem I have so far. But I'm going to get into my analysis towards the end, so back to the hypothesis for now. Once again, Earth sits at the center of the solar system, and so we can't apply gravity to it because it doesn't act like all other celestial bodies. Now, to answer the question of why gravity doesn't actually affect Earth, because I wanted to look for a real answer, there actually is a firm answer that is agreed upon by the Flat Earth Society. Yeah, it's a really simple answer. Gravity is actually a very weak force and doesn't have anything to do with the fact that we are stuck to Earth. So they say that it's actually extremely weaker than we believe. And in fact, the reason we are essentially stuck to the ground is because Earth is accelerating through space at 32 feet per second, which of course is 9.75 meters per second for folks who live outside of the empire that is the US of A. And just like how you stick to the back of a roller coaster or a car as they accelerate, you're stuck to the Earth because it is accelerating from the power of the what they describe as the universal accelerator, the UA, which is driven by dark energy. So please, for anyone who is not a subscriber to Flat Earth Theory, please don't stop listening at this point. Now, it's now getting to the point where there's real science being included here, and it's something I really want to get into later, but I have to move on. So I want to tackle images of Earth from space. And after a brief tour of the Flat Earth Wiki, I can see that there are literally hundreds of theories as to what is done to change and alter images, or what objects are actually there to make the Earth appear flat from space. Now, the Flat Earth Society doesn't actually lend any credibility to photographic evidence, as it's too easily manipulated and altered according to them. They state that no photo has ever shown a curvature or concave curvature at parts. And that's, again, from photos from space. Now, this is off the official wiki, and if I'm not mistaken, it would be convex curvature, not concave curvature. 'Cause I'm pretty sure concave curves inward, and the Earth, of course, curves outward. So maybe if anyone's listening from Flat Earth Society, I think that's what you're trying to say. But yeah, so it's believed that barrel distortion is primarily to blame for photos taken direct from above the Earth, and that difference in air pressure is to blame for photos taken from within a pressurized cabin, be it an airplane or a spaceship. Ultimately, photographic evidence should not be trusted. As to the image of the Earth itself, there is several different theories that maybe no photos were ever taken from Earth, and there's different objects were used. An egg being the object that was changed to look like the Earth seems to be the number one thing that I see in my searches. But there are tons of theories on this. Now, It appears, at least, that most, although certainly not all, flat Earth hypothesizers or believers, hypothesizers, I don't know if that's a word, that they agree that space is real and in some way exists above us. But generally, it is discussed as if there is either nothing or nothing that can be known below us. Now, most flat earthers seem to agree that most, if not all, space flights were faked, and this, of course, leads into the closing question I had on the topic, which is the conspiracy. Now, I really hope I'm not offending people with this, because I'm generally trying to get this theory across. Hypothesis. I keep calling it a theory, which it is not. It is a hypothesis. Now, the flat Earth hypothesis is centered around a conspiracy, which I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, and honestly, coming into this, I had a total misconception for what it actually is. At least, of course, according to the Flat Earth Society, who is the ones that I got all of this information from. They're the most public-facing organization, so I'm trusting it as gospel. Now, I mean, by that I mean like something I believe in, so I'm trusting it as the dictionary. I shouldn't have used gospel. As it turns out, they do not believe that there's a conspiracy led by NASA hiding the shape of the Earth, which is what I honestly thought, that flat Earth believers thought that NASA is hiding the fact that the Earth is flat. However, they believe that a conspiracy exists around space travel itself. And it's believed that NASA's real goal is to weaponize space, or at least for it to appear as if they had weaponized space, which is strange, of course, but there is several international agreements, which are a public document, which are meant to do exactly the opposite of this, and to not allow weaponization in space. But believers say, and, you know, I mean, I guess there's a solid chance that this is true, but they say that this is simply a front, that all these countries do it anyway. The part that I don't necessarily agree with is that they say that these are organized fronts to hide the truth, that space was never about exploration, but all about weaponization. Now, the conspiracy goes further to say that after NASA's early rocket technology failed, they decided to fake the program in its entirety and simply fly unmanned rockets out of sight so as to fool cameras and spectators. Now, NASA's near-perfect record with only 2 disasters over 45 years is often cited as a primary source of proof that, realistically, how could they get so good in such a short amount of time? They also go on to say that NASA shows the Earth as round because that is how they think it appears, and that there's no real space program, so that no one has ever actually been to space yet, and they are currently unaware of the true shape of the Earth. The leadership at NASA simply goes with what they were taught through school, as handed down by the ancient Greeks, that Earth is round, and they continue to teach it as a round Earth to this very day. Now, before I get on to my rant, in closing, I just want to say that I'll borrow from famous astrophysicist and woman's shoulder toucher Neil deGrasse Tyson, who said, quote, "Isn't it amazing that we actually accomplished something so unbelievable that even decades later, people still can't believe it happened?" So I answered all the questions really that I had coming into this. And I'm the type of person who can fall down these sorts of rabbit holes and start to think like, maybe. But I have to be honest and say that this is one where I had to take breaks. It took me 2 weeks to research it. And it's really, really confusing. And there's a lot of like what I would refer to as word salad. So I'm just going to get into it now. And if you believe in flat Earth, I want to say genuinely that I don't dislike you. I don't disagree. I disagree with you, but I'm not attacking you personally. But I mean, honestly, man, you just have to wonder. You just have to wonder, because if you are educated in mathematics, and maybe you're not, like maybe that's what it is. I'm really not sure. But I mean, you can like you can calculate these things. If you own a telescope, you can find the laser coming back from the moon. There is a mirror on the moon. You can buy a setup that's like a couple $100, and you can actually bounce a laser off the moon, and it'll come back to you. Like, these are real things we can do because a man was on the moon and he placed a mirror there. You can look with a satellite. You can actually with a telescope, you can actually see satellites. Like, the ISS is big enough that if you look through large enough telescopes like that, you can buy, like, you can look at, like, I have friends who own telescopes that you can do this. You can actually make out the ISS. You can see it. It's there. Can I see a dude in the window? No, but I mean, come on. The one thing that I really, really, really want to touch on is that there's one page that calls astronomy a pseudoscience, and then it starts to creep into including astrophysics as a pseudoscience. And this, to me, is really scary because I do not want, like, if anyone is listening to this who's under the age of 20, first of all, what the fuck are you doing listening to my podcast? I have a potty mouth. You should be studying. You should be doing anything better with your life than listening to me talk. But thank you for being here. But second of all, I want you to know that the study of physics and engineering is STEM in general, right? Science, technology, engineering, and math is so vital. Do not let these let anyone steer you away from that by their own personal beliefs. Because not only can you be super fucking wealthy, but what you're studying is real. Like, when you start learning, like, it's real. It just is. And there's an entire page right near the one of the first pages I clicked on, actually, that shows how really astrophysics and astronomy are pseudoscientific. It goes through the scientific method, which of course ultimately ends in experiment. And they say we can't get to space, therefore we can't experiment, which is tomfoolery. Because do you know how we found Neptune? Someone took calculations of the orbit of Neptune, and they were like, where would this planet... Like, there's all this stuff moving around, but we can't see anything, because Neptune is very dark. It's a very dark planet. It's very difficult to see. Even with expensive telescopes, it can be difficult to find. So what they did was they went and they calculated, okay, I see this is moving in that direction, that's moving in that direction. They mapped it all out. They did all the calculations, and they said, if we look right here tonight, there should be something there. And guess what? They fucking found a planet. That is experimentation. That is real. Beyond that, right? We know that stars are binary now. How do we know that? Well, we can measure X-rays emanating off of these binary star systems, right? We can measure gravitational waves. I've talked about that on the show. Underground, on this planet, on Earth, it's like a kilometer apart. We have two lasers that are constantly pointed at each other. And space-time creates a ripple so fine that our sensors can just pick it up. They can just pick up the distance. And the problem is, everyone who doesn't believe in a flat Earth is listening to this, like, holy fuck, that's so cool. Everyone who does believe in a flat Earth listens to this and they say, oh, come on, that's so bullshit. Listen to it. But I go back to the Neil Tyson quote that we can do things that are so incredible that you can't possibly believe it. And that fascinates me as a human being. Now, I want to rant a little bit because I've been reading and watching some stuff from Graham Hancock. And anyone who knows history, like any history buffs or archaeologists, may even scoff to hear his name. But the reason I want to bring it up is because I read it for fun. His theories are super cool, and, you know, I would love for some of them to be true. But essentially who he is a guy that he's a journalist that goes around, at least he calls himself a journalist. I don't really know if I would use that word, but he's more like a scientific investigator. Like, he investigates these strange phenomena. So his big claim to fame is a spot called Göbekli Tepe, which is in Turkey. Once again, shout out to Turkey, who were upset that their state-run media office was destroyed. And he believes that this site, well, it's agreed that it's the oldest site in human history, and he has some very differing opinions that the people who built it couldn't have been hunter-gatherers. It's a whole thing. He believes that humans existed in large society longer than everyone else, essentially. Longer than everyone else believes that humans have. Now, it's an extreme perspective, right? He's going against generally accepted science. But I think it's super important to open your mind to an alternative perspective. It's super important, and that's the reason why I did this episode, because sometimes people sound crazy, but sometimes those crazy people are correct, and we can't just sit on our high horse and say, oh, you're wrong. Like, you're wrong. I know you're wrong, right? Like I said, coming into Flat Earth, I was like, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong. Now, I'm like, yeah, they're still wrong, but I could actually sit down and have a discussion with someone who believes in Flat Earth, and I can be prepared for that discussion. Because I tell people all the time in politics, I don't listen to any left-wing news. Why would I? That's what I believe in. I don't need to know what I believe in. I want to know what you believe in. That way I can hear what you believe, and I can say, that sounds crazy. This is why I think that sounds crazy. Or maybe I find stuff that I believe in, right? And that's kind of the idea, is we need to open our mind to these different perspectives and take a look at the world in a way that maybe we never thought we would, a way that we never thought we should, right? Especially for those of us who are maybe, and I'll use the word indoctrinated, from the universities or colleges, even coming out of high school, right? You're indoctrinated to believe a certain way. Someone who went to a religious school growing up may come out, and not come out of the closet, but come out of school and see the world in a very different manner. They're working with people who did not live life the way that they have growing up, all the way until they're, 17, 18 years old. And now they're seeing this whole other side of society. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And vice versa. People who never knew religious people that maybe now work with folks who are religious. And they're like, oh, you do what on Sundays? Like, you believe what? That sounds crazy to me. But it's something they've never been exposed to. And I think it's really important to expose yourself to different ideas. So I don't think I'll be doing any similar episodes to this anytime soon, just because, honestly, I don't know what the feedback's going to be. I posted that I was going to do an episode on this. I'm just trying to pull it up right now. I posted it on Instagram, and I got something to the extent of 26 likes in like 13 minutes. So I'm kind of afraid, which is a lot for me, because I have I don't really use Instagram that much, so I have no followers. So I'm kind of afraid with what this episode's going to do. If I do really high numbers, I just need to see what the feedback's going to be before I commit to doing more. But honestly, I wouldn't even mind doing more on Flat Earth, because it's other than a few things I read, like the idea that astronomy and astrophysics is a pseudoscience. That's really the only thing that bothered me to read. The rest of it was quite interesting. Like I said, with the cyclical pattern of sun rotating causing summer up here and winter down there, and then summer down there and winter up here. It's really fascinating that people have thought all of this stuff through. And I'm a big Harry Potter head. I used to be super into Harry Potter lore. The reason I made a joke about J.K. Rowling at the beginning was because it's actually all the lore that J.K. Rowling writes online that you can read for free, that's what Flat Earth is like. There is tons of this, this fan art, really. And it's fascinating, because anyone can partake in it, and you can fall down a rabbit hole, let me tell you. There are full podcasts dedicated to Flat Earth. I know that because some have messaged me already in the 14 minutes since I posted online. So it's kind of crazy that people believe this. I really think so. I think that if you believe in Flat Earth, what I would challenge you to do is tell me one reason why the Earth wouldn't be flat. Because for me, I'm telling you the Earth is round. I know mathematically the Earth is round. I've done that math myself in physics class, right? You can actually calculate that. You can calculate the mass of the Earth and then the gravity it creates, blah, blah, blah. So I want to know, because if you can, like this dude who tried to build a rocket to see it for himself down in the southern U.S., and he like injured himself doing it, but whatever. Get yourself a rocket. Take the damn photo, because like there's no dude like just I've seen the sunset. Like I haven't seen anyone online who can describe the sunset. Watch the sunset from the Azores in Portugal. Watch the sunset. You can see it literally go down below the earth. It falls down. It doesn't disappear in a straight line. It falls down because the earth is rotating. I guess I have to say that I don't understand flat earth, and I really hoped that I would leave this conversation with a little bit more understanding. Because like I said, I find when I look into different theories and, political theory and, you watch like a documentary on like a haunting or something and you're like, oh shit, maybe. This one, no, like there is no maybe. I'm not even going to say I don't think. I'm going to say like I'm hard and fast, round earth shill. I already said I own the shirt, and I'm going to wear it proudly. I'm going to wear my Make America Smart Again shirt. And that's really all I have to say. Feel free, as always, to send me any comments or questions you have. If you're new to the podcast, I'd love to hear back. If you believe the earth is flat, honestly, like I'd love to hear you tell me about the sunset, and maybe I'll discuss it on the show next week, because I have way more questions than that. How can the temperature be absolute zero beyond the wall? I really don't think you understand what that means. If something hit absolute zero, theoretically it would spread because there would be no energy at all. And when there is no energy, that should spread indefinitely. At least that's what's believed. It's not believed to be absolute zero anywhere in the universe. So, explain that to me as well. And yeah, I would like to thank you all for listening. As always, this podcast is ad-free, and all I ask is that you share it with your friends and family, and subscribe on any podcast app or YouTube. Give it a thumbs up, give it a 5-star rating wherever you are listening on all major platforms. Of course, Podbean being my home, my casa, my crib, but it's also available on iTunes, Spotify, and all podcasting platforms. Once again, you can catch me live this Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern for UFC 237 on twitch.tv/Ultimate Fight Companions, along with amateur Muay Thai fighter Mate Parissa. You can find all of that information on my social media feeds, which are in the description for this episode. It's at Jacob Paveo on Twitter and at Jacob_Paveo on Instagram. And thank you all. And as always, we are now only a week away from another episode.